Standing up in McKinney, this is According to Callus. It is the 21st day of September, the year of our Lord 2024. It is episode 682. Today we're going to talk about time sucks. I don't know how else to do it other than just say it. The sucking of your time. You know, there's another guy that I have listened to for years, talks about the dash. This isn't about the dash. This is about the amount of time that gets wasted. And to a degree, we control that, right? So the other day I was, before we get into it, all right? Well, the topic is just how we waste time. How about that? But before we get into it, folks, the algorithms do not like us, and I need you to do me a solid. I need you to like, share, subscribe, follow, do whatever you can to get the word out. Break those algorithms. Move on over to the social medias, right? Like, share, follow there, and join me over on the page or group on Facebook. Find me out on Gab, where I'm Gab Pro, ooh. And then I still drop in over at MeWe. There's plenty of things you can go see there. The show matters, but only matters if my audience thinks it matters. And, I've got a lot of time invested in this. But at a certain point, all good things come to an end, or you got to decide this is a diminishing return on an investment. I was super excited about 6 or 8 months ago where we were. Like I said, I don't know what's real and what's not, but it can't go on forever if there's no return. So that being said, right now the primary focus of this here podcast is for me to vent, for me to try and speak about things objectively, but also get my point across, and quite frankly, do what I can to get others involved and to spur interest. Because as I've said many, many times, you may not care about the politics, but politics cares about you. So here we go on with the program. Speaking of time sucks, I think it'd be fair to say that some in my family think that this podcast is a time suck. Well, I don't know that they're entirely wrong. I look at it as an investment. Unfortunately, it's not an investment that has paid a dividend as of yet. And as I said, as a passion project, that's fine. But at a certain point, you get enough other things on your plate and something's got to give. I don't know. I'm 18 episodes from hitting 700 episodes. I guess at that point, maybe it's a chance to reevaluate what do I want to do next. But for now, we've got about 3 more weeks, maybe 4 more weeks worth of programming that I can definitely pull off without too much trouble. And certainly in the run-up to the possibly the most consequential election of my lifetime, I got to leave it all on the field, right? You got to do everything you can to make the difference while you can. So that's what I'm doing, folks. But why does it matter? Or what about this matters? Well, it's not just about my show. It's any number of things or ideas that you spend time on, right? I read books, quite a few books. Most of them are fiction because there's enough nonfiction in my life that I need a little fiction, a little getaway, a little alternative reality. For the same reason people watch movies, I read books. Not saying I don't like movies, but just saying. Other folks like to watch videos. Hey, I love watching a couple of YouTube videos. Helps me unwind. I get to see some really neat projects people are working on. I get to learn something. My wife used to refer to it lovingly as Professor Hour. There's a lot that can be learned and picked up by just watching a few well-done videos. But at the end of the day, when it's, 11 o'clock at night and you're getting ready to go to bed and you got to be able to look back and say, well, what did I get done today? That's a fair question. Did I spend time with the people that I wanted to spend time with? Did I take care of all the important business that needed to be taken care of? Did I do justice for my employer, for my children, for any number of things, right? Did I show any worship or respect to my Creator? These are all fair questions that are appropriate. And I don't know what the answer is for you, but that's where we're at. We need to consider that. So when I'm thinking about this and I consider the immense amount of time I am volunteering, donating, investing in, I guess, local state politics here, and I continuously run across what can only be described as misplaced notions of importance. I mean, I don't know how to phrase it without sounding terrible, and I'm trying to stay objective about this because, well, one, here's the thing. Let me back up a second. I'm personally aggravated when people go online or when they, send out long emails bashing individuals, bashing ideas, and calling people out by name. And right now I'm thinking to myself, I live in a glass house. I mean, that is, after all, a good chunk of what I do with my podcast. But I would like to tweak that in the sense that I go out of my way to not bring up names. I go out of my way to separate personalities. In fact, many times I've had to come on here and say, I might not be a huge fan of this specific elected official, but they did something good, or they did something that I support. And I try and stay objective about that. And I look at the things that we try to accomplish and the things that we're working on, and I constantly feel stymied by just, for lack of a better word, dumb reasons. And I want to be careful because I'm not saying the individuals are dumb. I don't necessarily think, legitimate reasons should be dismissed. But at a certain point, you've got to determine whether or not this is a legitimate thing that needs to be dealt with. And if it needs to be dealt with, does it need to be done here and now? And I think that is a major problem that we're suffering with right now. Somebody feels like they were personally attacked or abridged or whatever phrase you want to use, and they feel like they need to gum up the entire works so that they can speak their piece. That's a problem. So I would say two distinguishing differences are at play here, right? One, every little shortcoming or problem or thing I need to vent on is on my podcast when and if I get around to doing it. And you have the opportunity to walk away, shut it off, fast forward, whatever floats your boat. You might just say, this guy's, not my cup of tea anymore. Whatever. You, the listener, have the final say and control. But when you're in a large group trying to get work done and somebody just can't let something go, everybody's stuck. Everybody is forced. And you can't really do anything about it until you can. But here's the real problem or the quandary behind this, right? What is an appropriate response? If there's a legitimate problem, it ought to be addressed. If it's deemed illegitimate or not important and will be dealt with later, that should be sufficient. But some folks just seem to have troubles letting that go. So again, they demand your attention and they steal your time. So I'm not really sure what the solution is, but if you're investing in this instance 3 hours once a month to a meeting in which you're hoping to get things done and get some marching orders and whatever else, and you spend 2 of that hours listening to a personal vendetta being laid out, and vendetta is probably too strong a word, a personal conflict. How about that? People get tired of that. They get worn out. They get to the point that they wonder, why does this even matter? Why are we dealing with this? In short, they get beaten down. And when people get beaten down, they walk away. They give up. They lose interest. Now, the problem is, I can't put it beyond the realm of possibility that this is the long-term strategy all along, is we just drive off these people and we can seize control. I mean, it worked for the communists once. Why wouldn't it work for us? There are strategies and tactics that can be done, and both sides use them. And there isn't really an onus on the strategy. It's more of an onus on the individual and what they're trying to accomplish. So, when you're looking at the enormous amount of time that's being wasted, it begs the question, what is it that you want? And if you can't say what you want, then perhaps you ought to reconsider whether or not now is the appropriate time to be dealing with this. Because, people can be beaten down. People get beat up. They get beat. It's all over the place. It happens. It's just part of life at this point. The important thing is to remember we need to get back up. The next day matters, and the next day after that. It's a struggle at times, but I firmly believe that if not me, who, right? If I'm not willing to do this, if I'm not willing to take a stand, if I'm not willing to, do the work, how can I be upset when somebody else won't? Now, everybody's got their thing, whether it's a specific issue or a specific topic or, something that animates them. For me, it's always been liberty. The liberty to worship, the liberty to have a home, the liberty to protect my family. I mean, you can read a lot of different things into that, but ultimately, we generally, in these United States, want the same kind of things. Now, we can say that's part of our societal makeup, say it's part of the culture, say it's uniquely Western and or Christian, and I believe all those to be accurate. But we now are forced to live in a pluralistic society. And when we extend grace and patience, we have to still extend it to the people that are with us, that are on our team. Because when you're in a dominant position like we are in Collin County, or at least a perceived dominant position, it becomes really easy to start worrying about little details and fighting amongst yourselves instead of focusing on the specter of socialism, of leftist, of progressivism that's right around the corner. And, I think they find it quite humorous. They laugh at us. They find it intriguing that we are so foolish. They've got a point. Now, ultimately, I'd like nothing more than for everybody to get along and sing Kumbaya and go out and, kill Kami for mommy. And that's a joke. Relax. But I don't think that's feasible at this time. I mean, we have different definitions of the most basic things. And this is just on the Republican Party. On the right of center party, there's an entirely different universe which left of center orbits in. I don't know how we can fight that back or push against that if we can't even get our own house in order. So when we talk about the amount of time that's been wasted, that comes across as disorder in our own house. That sets us up for failure. That disrupts people's ability to think clearly and move forward on ideas. The longer that continues, the more people get worn out and beaten down. And while I would like to give the benefit of the doubt, while I would like to use the massive amount of grace that I'm capable of giving, at some point I just got to recognize that maybe the end goal is to run these people off, is to beat them down, that they just give up, so that whatever the end goal is achieved. To me, that's the biggest problem, because they can't articulate what they want. I mean, for me, it's pretty simple. I don't want government in my life any more than it absolutely has to be in my life. And I realize that definition is not clear. And I also realize that somebody else might want a whole lot more government in their life than I do. But I think we ought to have the option. I think we ought to very much be able to implement in Texas. Yeah, in Texas, we're going to have 10% government. But, if you really like that government, you can go over to California. They're 99% government. Yeah. Go to California. You'll be so much happier in California. I'm just saying. There is a reason why national divorce is trending. There's a reason why Texit is a thing, or Nexit. There's a reason why there's an Alaska Independence Party. There's a reason all these things exist. But I got to tell you, my biggest concern is they're never going to get off the ground because people are too busy infighting about minor little discrepancies or differences, and rather than focusing on the big picture. And while I don't claim to be perfect, and I can't say that my stuff doesn't stink, I can tell you that I try really careful to see the forest. To take a step back and consider what's all at play here. And I think we would all be wise to do that. I have friends, I have acquaintances, I have allies that all are a little different than me. And I think that's good. Some hold me accountable, some question me, some push me, some, want to remind me that they were right about things that I was wrong about. That's all good for what it is. I try to keep myself balanced. I try and keep myself accountable. But then things get left behind. Things get missed. And as I'm quickly approaching 700 episodes, I think to myself, is there really anything else that is important to be said? Is there any topic or any issue that I really haven't already touched on? Is there anything unique that could be a value add? At some point, perhaps is my show not only a time suck for me, which I would call it an investment, but is it a time suck for my listeners? Am I preventing them from doing something else? As you recall, I mentioned the fact that I like to watch some videos. I like to watch time lapse of people doing things to their home or their properties. And the outcome is always, pretty interesting. And somebody says, why would you want to watch somebody else living their life? I think that's a fair question. My response is they're doing things that I can't do, or they're doing things that I would like to do at some point in the future. And that's inspiration, right? I think it's a fair way to look at things. I've heard that you can't be successful if you're not content with who you are, what you have. But I've also heard that the most successful people are the ones that are never content and never have enough. So I'm not really sure which is the accurate way of looking at it. And I'm sure I could go whip out my Bible and check out Proverbs and it'd probably tell me something in line with the fact that, God's going to take care of your needs. Do your work and you'll be blessed. That kind of stuff, which is entirely accurate and appropriate. But when you're in a time of need, that's sometimes not what you want to hear. Just saying. I don't know what the right answer is for everybody, but I'll tell you for right now, it's got me thinking. How much more of my time, how much more time can I take away from other important things in my life to invest and doesn't make sense? And the reason why I bring this up, why it matters, is because I wasted 3 hours on a Monday night. It was actually longer than that, but 3 hours sitting in a meeting where we should have done some things that we couldn't get done. And there's only so much you can do about that. But now you take the fact that there's 150 people in that room with me times 3 hours. So that's 450 man hours that were flushed down the toilet that'll never, ever be retrieved. And very little productive was accomplished in that time period, yet here we are. 66 days away from early voting or whatever, 65 days, whatever it is now at this point, for the most consequential election in my lifetime, right? And I'm purposely not saying the most important because I've been hearing that since about 2000. And I don't think that's true. I just think the consequences are going to be significant. And just to answer the question, no, I don't think we've done enough to stop the steal. I don't think we've done enough to correct what happened in 2020. I don't know that my county party or my county commissioner's court is really going to be able to do anything significant to do anything to stem the tide of the problem within the state of Texas, much less everything else that's going on in the other states. So I got to tell you, as much as I agree with and I appreciate what the election integrity people do every day, to a certain point, you got to quit beating up the people on your own side and focus on the bigger picture. Focus on where the real problems are. You know, I've said 100 times, if I've said it once, Collin County's not the problem. It ain't perfect. You know, there's issues, yes, but we're a small potato. Again, the amount of time and resources invested to go focus on an issue in Collin County, that is a very small issue here when you got a bigger issue at the state or a bigger issue in Dallas or Houston, San Antonio, Austin. It makes no sense. It's just, hey, it's right here, low-hanging fruit. We're gonna go after this first. It seemed to me, and this is a phrase that one of my bosses use, and I've heard it before. You take care of the big rocks first. If you're trying to fill up the space, you use big rocks. You solve the big rock issue first. Then you put in the smaller things. You deal with the smaller things, right? I think that's a very good point. Focus on the majors. Now, there's a danger. And again, while we're talking about time sucks and waste of time, there's a danger if you don't watch the little things. I'm not saying you ignore them, but if you don't at least watch them, they gang up on you. And they eventually overcome you. We don't want that either. It's been said that every organization that is not explicitly right-wing becomes left longer and longer. That time goes on. And more left with more time. I've seen plenty of evidence to that play out. Whether it be local stuff or church stuff or just life in general. I think it's because people have been trained up for a couple of generations now to be dependent on government, to be dependent on stuff beyond them, rather than focusing on themselves. Obviously, you want to seek help from the Almighty, right? But focusing on yourself, doing what you can for yourself and within your family, and resting on the fact that your family's got your back and ultimately the Almighty God has your back, that's been replaced by a government for generations. And we've now reached that tipping point where maybe they've got a majority. Maybe they're going to sell us down the sewer here, right? So I'm just thinking maybe if we reallocated some of that time that got sucked away into nothingness and focused on that issue or those things, we could bring this back around. I don't know what that looks like for you. I'm trying to sort it out for myself right now. So by all means, just an observation, just a thought, something I want you to consider. What is it you're spending your time on? And is it a net beneficial thing? Is it going to pay a dividend? Is it a positive outcome? And if you don't know, or God forbid, if it's a negative, stop. Or at least reevaluate if it's an unknown. And that's where I'm at, right? I mean, I like what I'm doing here. This is a fun way to spend time. But in 18 episodes, I need to make a decision. I need to decide what the best way forward is. And hopefully in these next 18 episodes, I'll be able to come up with some workable solutions, and we will talk about it. And for those of you that have reached out over the couple of years that have been doing this, appreciate the feedback. Thank you. If I know you in real life, IRL, right? I'd like your feedback as well. Come and chat with me. Let's talk. So, I mean, that's it for today. Let's cut it short. It's Wednesday. We all have things to do. It's church night. You can listen to me on Thursday. That's fine. And with that, this has been According to Callus. And yes, I will see you on the other side.
For all your Texas fashion tees, it's TexianPride.com. Whether you're out honky-tonkin' in Austin, bucking Broncos in Fort Worth, or strolling the San Antonio Riverwalk, Texian Pride is here for you. Support a Texan-owned business and show off your love for Texas with style. Visit TexianPride.com for your next fashionable Texas tee.